Next, from the state capitol, Representative Elaine Nekritz discusses a bill that will provide restricted driver's permits for those with multiple DUIs. This runs about 8 minutes.
Representative Elaine Nekritz, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
You recently had a bill that I think some people wanted to hear a little more of an explanation about, and it's probably easy a thing to demagogue about. But it was a bill that would allow people who had heretofore had several DUIs to continue driving. Can you give us the rationale behind the law and why it was brought to your, or how it was brought to your attention?
Sure. Currently, people with multiple DUIs ended up with a total suspension of their driver's license. But what we think is that many of them are driving anyway because they have to in order to be able to support themselves and their family. We'd like to give them a safe and legal way to be able to do that, recognizing that we don't want drunk drivers back out on the road. So there are a lot of hurdles in this bill that one has to go through before you could get not your driver's license back, but a restricted driver's permit.
And what are some of those restrictions?
You'd have to wait for 5 years from the completion of your last sentence. You'd have to demonstrate that to the satisfaction of the Secretary of State. You have to go before a hearing officer, make application, and demonstrate that you've been alcohol-free for at least 3 years, completed some sort of program like an AA program. You would have to drive with the breathalyzer, the interlock ignition device, for the rest of your life at your expense, and so I think that's that. And you would be only available for a restricted driver's permit, as I said, which limits the places you can drive and the times of day that you can drive.
I know that probably wasn't an easy bill to bring up because so many people would attack it, but what caused you to author this? Did someone bring some examples to your attention?
Yeah, actually, I had a constituent who came in who, was one of those people that suffered from alcoholism, turned his life around, was now helping others turn their lives around, and yet he couldn't get any sort of driving privileges whatsoever. And when someone comes to you and is clearly a model citizen, doing everything we ask them to do, I think we should be open to giving them an opportunity to be a more productive citizen.
And what is the bill number on that?
It's Senate Bill 1996.
And where does it stand in the legislative process?
It's on third reading in the House right now, and we've been working a roll call, and I feel pretty positive about the outcome.
If it were to pass and signed by the governor, when would it become effective?
I believe July 1.
As we stand here, and of course we're trying to wrap up the legislative session, give us your thoughts. Where do you stand? And of course the big issue this year, it seems to be really pretty much the budget, and whether we're going to extend the tax increase past January. What are your thoughts?
We've done a lot of work in the last several years to stabilize the state's fiscal situation. We raised taxes. We've made cuts. We're spending $2 billion less in discretionary spending than we were back in 4 years ago in fiscal year 2009. We've significantly paid down the backlog of bills to the point where we're almost on a 30-day payment cycle. So we've made a lot of strides. I think the question is, are we going to be able to maintain that progress, or are we going to be slipping back to the point where we're going to be increasing the backlog of bills and have to make really, I think, deep and unwelcome cuts into programs that really do serve the citizens of the state of Illinois? So that's the debate we're having right now.
People may remember you were head of the pension committee in the House, and that obviously that was one of the really big issues. Last year, you were successful in getting the reforms passed, signed by the governor. Now there's a stay on the implementation of that until some of the courts, and I'm not sure what process would be before they rule on the constitutionality. What are your thoughts on the constitutionality of the bill, but also where do we stand vis-a-vis having that money available, the savings available, or not?
The actuaries told us that if the pension bill went into effect immediately, we would see an immediate $1.2 billion reduction in the amount that the state had to pay toward the pension systems. We have not budgeted for any of that in the current budget debate because the courts have not ruled, and so we think it's prudent to not count on that. The court issued us a full stay of the bill. I think those of us involved in this debate thought, what took them so long? We thought this would happen very much quicker than it did, so I'm not surprised at all that there's a stay. And we'll see what and the stay does, as my reading of it, it stays in effect until the Supreme Court actually rules.
Yeah, everyone last year was talking about, of course, there was going to be a constitutional question and a lawsuit, and there have been more than one. But lastly, I guess it's not the legislature's business to encourage the Supreme Court to rule quickly, but given that you don't know how much money is within the legislative body there is available, what would your hope? I mean, I'm trying to not to ask the question in a silly way, but I guess you would encourage the court to rule sooner rather than later.
Well, that would be great. I mean, not only for the state's fiscal health, but I think this is an issue we need to get behind us, and we need to know what the courts are going to tell us about how and we're working on other pension bills as well for the city of Chicago, Cook County, and for police and downstate and suburban police and fire. So it would be helpful to have that guidance. That being said, we're not waiting for those other for the other pension bills for those other governmental agents. We're not waiting on the court to ask. We're moving ahead because it's important for the fiscal health of those governments as well.
You know, we won't keep you past. So let me just tease a little bit because you opened up a good can of worms. But we had covered the city finance officer of the city of Chicago in the past, saying we have enough money to pay current retirees, but not enough money to pay the pensions of those who are now on the beat. So the pensions in the city of Chicago and some other areas that you just alluded to are in really dire financial straits. Just a little bit of where does that stand, and when might we expect some action on those pension issues?
What's outstanding right now are the Chicago police and fire pensions, which are two separate funds, and then the downstate and suburban police and fire funds. They have very different benefits, and when it comes to the downstate and suburban pension program, each municipality has its own pocket of money in that pension fund. So some of them are 20% funded of 20% of the liability of the assets they need to pay liabilities. Others are at 80% of the assets they need to pay liabilities. So there's a lot of complexity there that has yet to be worked through. I don't anticipate that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So I would think we would be coming forward with something more along the lines of veto session.
I'm sorry, when?
More in the veto session.
All right, Representative Elaine Nekritz, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Terry.
The Illinois Channel's coverage of the state legislature is underwritten by the Illinois Trial Lawyers Association.